Hey, Tammy Davis, thanks so much for joining me. I am here to talk about autism specifically today. And that's because a friend of mine who was also a client contacted me earlier this morning. And even though I've been helping her family with a number of health concerns, the predominant one is the diagnosis of autism. She's got twin girls that will be 3 the beginning of August. A little over a year ago, they began their assessment process due to difficulty with textures, sensory issues, basically nonverbal, and so forth. So, like I said, they were given the diagnosis of autism. However, she contacted me this morning because she's really having a hard time with this. It's a reasonably new diagnosis, and just coming to terms with it. And so it just made me think about the number of parents. I actually am very well connected to a lot of families that currently are living with autism, both the individual themselves as well as the families. I've supported autism for quite a long time now, and the various issues. The biggest challenge we have is the way it's the integration of the two of the different modalities. That's what I see the biggest issue is when I'm working with them. That would be my assessment. At any rate, it really brought to mind the desire to speak up on their behalf, not the families, but the individuals themselves. And it also reminded me that there's a new diagnosis every day. There's more than one diagnosis every single day. My oldest son was labeled special needs, yet he, at that time, the autism wasn't really spoken much about. It wasn't qualified as well, I should say. Although he does demonstrate behaviors that are very much like you would find on the spectrum. So at any rate, the big question that came across to me this morning was, what did I do wrong? That's the reason why I'm speaking here. Because my response to her was, you did nothing wrong. You and their father did everything right. And that's how I summed it up. At the same point, I also elaborated on why I feel that way, and this is what I want to share with you today. However familiar you are with it, if you're new to the diagnosis, or if you are a parent or a sibling, you've more than likely heard that autism is not a disease. It's not, I should say, the statement is it's not a disability. It's a different operating system. Now, I've even had people kind of look at it, when we talk about diagnosis, that's typically the theory that there's something wrong. And so we go into disease or disorder, more specifically with things like autism. But I want to preface something here. When we say dis-ease or disorder or disability or discomfort, we're talking about a lack of something. So you have a lack of comfort, you have a lack of ease, a lack of order. Now, if we look at it from that angle, then you can truthfully say that it's a lot easier to deal with any health condition, not just autism, when you realize that our task is to help restore ease, comfort, and order to the body. But I've jumped ahead of myself because the most important part here is something that's not frequently talked about, and that is that well, first of all, I'm certain you know that they've been studying the genes in our cells for quite a long time now. Francis Crick and James Watson were responsible for identifying the double helix of the DNA. But it was a woman that actually, back in the 1930s, and forgive me, I will get her name and put it in the description box below. Sorry, I thought I heard something. At any rate, back in the 1930s, she is responsible for identifying the ability of the DNA to adjust, to make adjustments to itself. They called them, there's little elements along the DNA strands that are capable of relocating in times of stress. Doesn't necessarily mean mental, emotional stress. It could be environmental stress. It could be in the presence of bacteria or viruses. The DNA is structured in a way that it actually alters itself. One of the things, though, that was huge and actually brought me to tears when I first sat and thought along these lines was the fact that the DNA actually in the chromosomes prior to conception can do this. And so like I said, so before a baby is conceived, there are alterations that more than likely have occurred along that DNA strand. This is the reason why people look different. I mean, yes, we may have similar eye color, hair color, facial structure. I mean, there's the Mendelian traits, the genetic inherited traits that we get. And then there is the differentiation between us. So I guess what I wanted to say is that the first thing that came to mind was there's a definite intention. I had heard years ago that the universe that intended for us to be here, and for each one of us to be here, whether you want to refer to the universe as consciousness, spirit, God, whatever you relate to, there was a large amount of talk and written material that was coming out that was talking about that there's a universal, there's an intention. And I never could wrap my head around that. I never could until now. Now that I understand that our DNA is actually making adjustments prior to a fertilized egg ever happening is just awe-inspiring, because that tells me that nature is actually making the needed changes to not just, it's to make you, as how I want to say it. It's just to make you, to make me. And me as a mother, and my mother, and everyone else, we are, and our fathers are just simply the vehicles that actually help bring in us as God's children. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And it's brilliant. It's an actual brilliant thing. And like I said, when I told my friend that, she did nothing wrong, I wanted to emphasize the fact that there's been, from what I remember, or from what I understand, rather, is there have been 64 significant adaptations that have occurred to the human genome throughout our existence, from the beginning of our existence. And the last big significant one was during the time of the Black Plague. Something happened within our genetic structure that protected. That's the reason. That's what actually saved our asses. I mean, let's just be frank about it. I mean, because over 70 million people died from that disease, yet the species lived on. And this is what I've been talking about in prior videos. If you haven't watched them, I mentioned that there is that the DNA, our genes, actually adapt for the preservation of the species. And that's exactly what happened during the time of the Black Plague. And what I'm here to say now is that autism, to me, is the next level of adaptation that's occurring. I realize that we're doing all sorts of brain imaging and identifying various active areas within the brain that are different from a normal brain. But who's to say why is that bad? Why is their sensitivity level bad? Now, I do want to go on to say that I do recognize that the longer that you're on this planet, the more exposure you have to additives, preservatives, bacteria, viruses, other hazardous toxins, whether they be in the air, in the water, in clean, house cleaning materials, what have you. We're exposed. We're exposed to we take medications, we take supplements that have inactive ingredients in them. So there's a lot of information that's getting into our systems that is going to consistently make adjustments. But I want to really highlight here that our genes adapt for the preservation of the species. And again, I'm going to say a lot of people would probably disagree with me because we have so many diseases and disorders. But what if these are actually cries for help? What if these are actually signals, divine messages, if you will, that are trying to help us understand that we need to work in sync? There's a cooperative effect throughout nature, and we are isolating ourselves from nature. And what if this is actually what nature is actually calling it? It's a call to action. That's how I want to say it. It's a call to action. And in the case of autism, yes, it is absolutely a different operating system. I understand that some people would say they lack an ability, okay? Because remember, disability is lack ability. Yes, they lack the ability to maybe verbally speak, but I'll tell you what, these people can communicate. And you give them, they're not, and by any means, compromised mentally, nor are they compromised emotionally. I think their biggest challenge is, number one, the exposure to our environment. Number two, feeling different or being told that they're different than everyone else. So there's a degree of discomfort now that comes from being singled out and identified as something that's abnormal, as well as like I said, just lifestyle. So there's changes that occur, and they are not immune to other health challenges. And this is where I like to come in, because it's not about fixing the autism. It's about helping them find comfort in their own skin. It's about helping their bodies protect itself and allowing them to step into their fullness. And so it really just made sense to me to speak out on that, because, like I said, I am in awe, truthfully, of anyone that is going on and is in this world and facing some degree of mental instability, mental and emotional instability. And like I said, you can look at someone who is living with the diagnosis of autism and at some point distinguish their discomfort. It's difficult. Again, the tactile sensations, that textures, these do disturb them, but that's a hypersensitivity. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, the integration of modalities can be too much for them. If we're talking about a hypersensitive system, then too much information coming into the body, even if it is supplements and medications and so forth, is going to be too much information, and it could actually aggravate the system. I know that sleep is another big one for many of them, as it is for so many of us. But that is, again, with minimal assistance that helps them, keeps their bodies strong and able to eliminate the unnecessary chemicals and do what it can do to protect us or protect them, is what I see is important for us to do. Because the last number I heard, that there's over 70 million people on the planet now living with the diagnosis of autism. Now, I find that number fascinating, given the fact that over 70 million people died of the plague when the change on within the immune system. That's the adaptation that actually occurred. Is there's an imprint on the immune system that happened, and a change that occurred at that time, and it's still distinguishable today. So again, those numbers are fascinating, because at this point we have over 70 million people on Earth that are living with autism, and maybe it's time that we recognize them for the next level of human that's here to help us, to lead. I mean, this is their world, guys. This is their world. I mean, this is all of our world, but we need to learn how to get along. I had actually put on Twitter yesterday, can't we all just get along, said one cell to the other. That's really what I see going on, is just the cells battling it out. But the fact is that autism isn't going away. People aren't doing anything wrong. These are divine changes that are occurring within our own chromosomes that are bringing these children into the world. And trust me, there's a lot of negative talk about what could come in our world. And I just want to say it right here, that as long as children are coming into this world, whether they have autism or not, gives me hope. And that there's something greater than us that knows the future of our world. And truthfully, I think autism are going to be the leaders in this arena, because the brilliance, and this isn't to take away from anyone else, okay? Theirs is just focused. They have what my experience, let me say it that way, my experience of autism, and including my own son, is it's like their purpose, their reason for being here is like up front and in your face from the moment. Like the rest of us are all like looking for what is our reason for being here. With autism, it's like right there. And so our job as mentors and caretakers, or caregivers and teachers and parents, is to groom that, is to cultivate that. And so that they can step into, like I said, their fullness. So that's really what I want to say. It's that none of us are doing anything wrong. Whether you have a special needs child that's not living with autism but has other challenges, it's not that we've done anything wrong. This is a divine gift, and our job, again, is to cultivate those precious gifts. A lot of times I see with special needs children, it's unconditional love, guys. Their hearts are just magnificent. And again, this isn't to say that the rest of us aren't capable of unconditional love. We just have experiences. We have that normal brain, if you will, that has kind of boxed us in. And these disabilities are actually barriers to overthinking anything. And in my humble opinion, if the world continues to produce those who are classified as special needs and those who are classified as normal, and I really hope that we can find another way to label all of this, but for lack of a better explanation, if the world continues to produce these various populations, we stand to learn a lot from one another. And that's where they question, can't we all just get along? And, it's really about learning from them and them learning from us and us helping them find the comfort in their skin. So anyway, that's what I wanted to offer you today. Please know that as a parent of an autistic child, you did nothing wrong. It's an absolute blessing, as with anybody else with a special needs child. Our world needs more love, and maybe that's really what this is all about. So thanks for watching, and I hope you guys are having a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.